7 o'clock. And joining us on the phone this morning is House of Representatives representing here in CD2 for us in New Mexico, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell back on the phone with us. Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Good to be with you again, Mike.
Glad to have you. It's always a good time talking with you, even if the stuff we're talking about is always not the most fun. But I love having to talk with you on the radio here. So
I like the way you say that. It's the stuff we talk about is not always the most fun. I kind of like the way you kind of preface this. That's funny.
Well, I mean, it would. Unfortunately, you don't get to do all good news stuff all the time. They make you you spend more time fighting than working on the. But
yeah.
I'm guessing is probably a lot of border talk in Congress right now. Is that pretty much the main thing, or is there something bigger fish that you're working on right now?
No, the border has absolutely been the focus this week, especially in light of the administration wanting to get rid of Title 42 fully.
Yeah.
And of course, the Louisiana judge came back and said no. That needs to stay in place. And we know that that'll be temporary. We know this administration will probably appeal that. So regardless, it will eventually go away. But what has been very interesting this week is Secretary Mayorkas, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, for the first time since I've been in Congress, we actually now have had him in front of two different committees. So he was on Homeland Security Committee earlier in the week, and then yesterday sat in front of the Judiciary Committee. And I can tell you this, it was even more frustrating than before. I mean, he actually said that he had operational control over the southern border. Well, Mike, I don't know about you, but when we have a record number of illegals crossing our border, there were over 220,000 in March alone, I don't think that signals operational control. And I actually kind of feel like, don't you have to have control of something before you can, actually say you've got control? And there's absolutely no evidence of that.
That's
and
it's
just getting worse and worse. Yeah, and the morale of the Border Patrol officers just really not being able to do their jobs because so many of them now have been pulled back into the soft side, meaning they're in the processing centers.
Sure.
Instead of out boots on the ground. And I was down on our southern border Good Friday and went down, and I was down on the Johnson Ranch for about 2.5 hours. I did not see one Border Patrol agent that entire time.
Wow.
However, right before I got down to the ranch, I stopped in Columbus at a little restaurant there called Borderland. And there were some National Guard troops in there. So, of course, I thanked them, and I said, hey, where are you guys from? And they were all from Florida.
Oh, really?
Because our governor doesn't see a crisis happening on our southern border, doesn't understand just what is happening down there. So it's a testament to governors around the country that understand the protection we need to have in place and the help we need to provide our Border Patrol officers.
Wow.
So, yes, they were all from Florida, and they told me that the uptick in encounters out there on the Johnson Ranch, then going west to Hachita, down on Judy Keeler's place, it's just, he said it's astronomical. And so it's just really a big deal, and it has been for a very long time. And I'm hoping maybe to get some more press down to New Mexico's border so we can really, show everybody what is going on. In fact, one of the ranchers, Judy Keeler, sent me a text Monday and just so frustrated. They had done another raid, big encounter there.
Okay.
They brought a bunch of the illegals to her front yard because it's the proximity to where Border Patrol could pick them up. But she said there was a pregnant woman, obviously pregnant, holding a 1-year-old with a 3-year-old next to her.
Wow.
In a group of men that she said the whole thing looked wrong. But this is what we're seeing day in and day out across the southern border.
And then once this Title 42 gets lifted, there's I've heard thousands, if not millions, waiting for that to happen and start making their treks across the border as well, too. So we're talking about not enough staffing and people there now. Wait till that Title 42 hits. It's going to be a huge problem if they don't address this some way, shape, or form.
Right, because the problem is we're seeing about 8,000 people a month coming across the southern border. When Title 42 goes away, we can expect to see numbers around 18,000, and that number comes from Brandon Judd, the president of the Border Patrol Council. And I just had a meeting earlier this morning before we got on the call here with the with the Border Caucus here in Washington. There's several members that belong, and Congressman Biggs from Arizona, he was talking about, I went down to the California border, down to Tijuana and that area just to see how things were going.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about that in a minute. But then I went to New Mexico, back to our border, instead of going to Yuma. But he was saying at the Yuma Processing Center, it's built for about 800 people.
Yeah.
During COVID, they tried to keep it around 350.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, right there at Easter, when he went down, they had over 3,000 people at that processing center.
Wow.
And that's before Title 42 goes away.
Wow.
So the pressure, that we're putting on these facilities, and this morning at our meeting was the new commissioner of the Border Patrol Council. He's from Arizona and clearly completely out of touch with reality. Sounded just like Secretary Mayorkas saying, we've made great improvements. He said he'd been down on the border, talked to hundreds of agents that are doing good. The morale is fine. They're very excited about the tools they're implementing. Well, that's very interesting because we're hearing they need more resources, they need more tools, they need to finish the wall.
Yeah.
So
all
it's just part of it's just part of this administration's narrative, and that's exactly what Secretary Mayorkas did in the committee hearings. This is exactly what the commissioner did this morning. And I tell you, who's not buying into this anymore are the people of New Mexico, the people of America. They are over it. They see the detrimental, outcomes of this, the fentanyl, the uptick in crime, the uptick in people, these kids getting into our schools where there's just not enough room in some places, maybe not New Mexico, but definitely Texas.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, I learned something new, talked to some people in New Mexico yesterday, and this is something I've never talked about because I honestly didn't think about it because we're always focused on human trafficking, the illegals coming over and the drugs. But this gentleman told me the one thing no one's even mentioned is there is a lot of livestock smuggling going on. I had no idea.
Really?
In the thousands of heads. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. If people say, hey, we got to eat, we're out here, and, you don't think about it, but if you think about it, it makes sense a little bit, you know what I mean? Because when you got that many people, they're going to eat what they need to eat, and if it's stealing and taken, that's what they got to do to survive, and that's a problem.
That's exactly right. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it was kind of twofold. He said that even some of the brand inspectors and the inspectors down on the border are having a tough time because even when they are able to finally, wrangle these guys in, get a hold of these animals, whether it's horses or cattle, get them down. Then mostly they move them over to Texas to hold on to them. But then the courts are so busy and so full that the judges aren't even hearing these cases. But here's the one thing I want to say is what I'm hearing is some of the cattle coming across aren't the best, and the horses as well.
Okay.
And what the concern is they're thinking, and I think this might be right, and it's horrible to think about, but they're thinking because they don't go through any of the X-ray machines or anything when they bring them, especially across Columbus.
Yeah.
It's diseases and full of fentanyl, full of drugs. They get them across that border very quickly so they can do away with them and get the drugs back out of them. It's a very almost foolproof way to do it.
I didn't think, because think about it. They were using babies, get them across, stuffing them, and that's horrifying. So this doesn't seem like a hardly a stretch at all to do that if they're capable of doing that. You know what I mean?
That's right. And I've had people say some of the livestock coming across, some of it no doubt healthy, but you're right as it relates to these transmittable diseases in herds. And I remember some years back there was a huge outbreak of I don't remember if it was. I'm not sure if it was bird flu or what, but remember it was something to do with livestock, poultry coming across the border. It was just getting into
like a
all of these
thing or something,
or something.
Yeah,
there was, but it was coming from out of country, and and I've had meetings with dairy people and some of those folks, and there are some concerns that even TB and these dairy herds is coming from south of the border, because we as Americans, and just with our health safety, with our agriculture operators that are so careful, now to see diseases not only in humans, that we haven't seen these transmittable diseases in decades, but now to see uptick in livestock diseases. And, I was just sitting there yesterday thinking, goodness sakes, I hadn't really thought about this and hadn't even talked about this. So, but it just goes to show the complexity of this issue and how we're continuing to put New Mexicans and Americans in harm's way without even batting an eye, and it's sad. It really is sad.
Especially in the world we live in, where we need to be doing the opposite. We need to ramp up our efforts, not loosen them a little bit here. I have a quick question related to this before I want to talk about something else. I remember Texas was about a month ago. Whenever they were gathering up these the folks that are crossing the borders, they were putting them on buses and sending them to D.C. And I remember seeing in the news how whatever happened to that. Are they still sending them to D.C.? And what? Yeah. Do you know what happened to them after they went to D.C.?
They get to D.C. and a few of the buses I saw were met by NGO, these non-governmental organizations who, now that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother show segment. But, and then from there, some of them I know were being picked up and taken to some different, like these organization places, these halfway houses, others. But that's just what's happening all over.
Okay.
I actually took a guy from New York down to the southern border right there at Easter. That's why I wanted to go down there. Mm-hmm. And the reason he wanted to go, and I thought this was really cool that he wanted to connect the dots. He said in New York, and he lives in the heart of New York, and he said, they call them midnight migrants because they have over 160,000 people who've been flown into New York City, and that's it. They get off the plane and they're on, maybe there's a non-governmental organization waiting for them, maybe not. Maybe they have a sponsor there. So they're just infiltrating the community, the city. And so the reason he wanted to come, and I was really excited that he wanted to come to New Mexico, is he did a lot of video down there, but to show people, this is where it starts.
Gotcha.
And then, and then back to New York, and this is where it's ending.
Yeah.
Or this is where the new chapter starts. And so he was showing those big breaks in the border barrier, where we've got all that material sitting out there on the ground, and yet no political will by this administration to finish the border wall. So it was very interesting. That I thought would be a great messaging tool, and to help, I think, let people see and understand. Because if you haven't been down there, you just kind of can't get a sense for what's happening.
Well, and the American people are getting mixed signals from what's going on down there. And I mean, we New Mexicans and Americans that live on the border understand it, but folks that don't. They'll see the images on the news at night, and you look, and I think a lot of people think it's all a bunch of people that are looking for a future here, which we understand. Yeah, we get people like that too, and we understand we want kids, and we're not trying to be like menaces, but unfortunately, there's so much nefarious that comes through with that, and so they're playing an angle like, oh, it's just a bunch of people looking for freedom, and I'm not saying there's not people in that, but amongst all of that is stuff that wants to hurt and kill and damage this country, either intentionally or unintentionally, and we have to protect our citizens, and so that's the balance. It's like, no, if we want to help these same people that are looking for, but there's a different way to do it. You can't just start walking across the border because of the sex trafficking, the drugs, the terrorism, and just the biological, the stuff about bringing disease and things that we don't want in this country to spread and create a pandemic. All of that is the variables we're talking about here. And so we want to find a way to help people that need help, at the same time protect the citizens of the United States. And Democrats and Republicans have very differing views on how to do that. And that's what we're debating right now. And I think like what you're talking about, getting people down there, taping, showing what's really going on down here, people can maybe at least understand what we're talking about instead of making it, oh, you're heartless, you're this, and it's like, no, we have hearts, but at the same time, we don't want to destroy the America helping people at this. You know what I mean? We've got to find that balance, and if we overtax ourselves, we're going to end up creating a weaker country and being vulnerable to everything else, superpowers to disease to people defending trying to take away our freedoms. That happens every single day because they don't have them, and that's what we're talking about.
Yep, and you nailed it. And believe me, I mean, it's horrible. I mean, my heart breaks for these people. And I know there's a percentage that do want to come for a better life and all of this, but the real clear message needs to be, we have to take care of our own first, like you just said it perfectly, you know, the health, safety, welfare, the sovereignty. But here's what's interesting. There are a lot of people that think that all these people that are coming over illegally, not, you know, a large number of them, are coming here to seek asylum. But what I want people to understand is, number one, of the 2 million people that came into the nation last year illegally, the actual percentage of asylum seekers, I mean legitimate asylum seekers, is less than 10%. It's single digits. And so people need to understand that. Number two, law states that you cannot seek asylum for the purpose of economic gain. So you can't just say, I'm seeking asylum because I want to move to America or what other country, some other country to get a better job. You can't. That's against the law. And in our laws and in immigration laws, if you are truly seeking a political asylum, then you have to go to the first port of entry that you make contact with in whatever country that is.
Okay.
The first country away from your country of origin. Many of these people are coming through 2 or 3 countries to get to America and then seeking asylum. So that's why even of the small percentage of people that are actually making it to court, the court cases get thrown out because it's actually not a legitimate asylum case.
Okay.
And, you know, so the other problem with this is, you know, they're coming, then asking for asylum, then their court cases are, you know, maybe 18 or 24 months away. Well, most of them are not showing up for court, and then we've got that entire catch and release, and we've got that, you know, the ankle monitor, which people are cutting off immediately, and even the Border Patrol will tell you that a lot of these migrants that come into the country, go to court, the cartel are waiting on the backside of that courthouse, waiting to get those people again, because in some cases these folks are trying to do better, still owe the cartel money. And what we've done is create, way beyond the cottage industry, we have created an all-out funding source, a revenue stream for the cartel, and they're the biggest winners in this whole entire process.
Yeah, the more this goes on, the more money they make, the more power they gain, and the worse it is for the average person, you and I here.
Exactly. And then, oh my God, I got to say one more thing, because this made me so mad. In the hearing the other day with Secretary Mayorkas, they're actually considering utilizing VA, Department of Veterans Services, resources to take down to the border to ensure these people, who are, by the way, breaking the law to enter our country, but to make sure that they have access to the medical services they need. I am
they
so
can't take care of the
angry
VA,
about that.
our veterans right now, let alone other people. They have no business doing anything other than working with veterans, because they haven't finished doing that yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the double standard.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was on the Newsmax the other night, and I said that is absolutely absurd, the fact that we have homeless veterans, that we make veterans jump through hoops when they should have access to health care and benefits easier than anybody else. And yet we're considering now taking away the doctors, nurses, some of the medical staff, and some of the medical equipment away from veteran services, pushing it to the southern border so that we're able to provide medical services for illegals. I'm telling you, the double standard and the hypocrisy of what this country is doing right now to the American people it's embarrassing, it's horrific, and it just makes no sense whatsoever. And I could not have imagined ever that we would hear and see the things that we're seeing in our country right now. And I know, I mean, I'm not the only one. It's everybody is starting to see it. You know, it's not blue and red anymore. It's
Well,
red, white, and blue because people care.
if you need more evidence, look in the headlines yesterday. One of the big things that were in the headlines yesterday was this, Ministry of Truth or whatever they're wanting to call this thing that they're looking into about. You've heard about this, right? Where the president was talking about this panel on seeking the truth and the ministry of, that doesn't raise 17 red flags. I don't know what does.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that came out, I hadn't really heard about. I know a little bit what you're talking about, but I haven't been following that close. But the other thing, and my Orca said this in the committee hearing, was, they're setting up a disinformation, a task, kind of under the arm of the Homeland Security.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me? And then Mayorkas has said it twice. Once he said that the biggest, greatest threat to the American public is this white supremacy, this entire racial divide. But then a few weeks ago, he said the greatest threat to the American people is climate change. I mean, how about the greatest threat right now is this administration, these failed policies, and these cabinet members that won't enforce the law or uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the biggest threat to the American people. Ignorance and really a dereliction of duty. That's the biggest threat to the American people.
I know we got to wrap it up here, but they've been saying this as long as I've been on this earth. You'll never lose your freedoms all in one great chunk. They're going to take it one at a time, slowly evolve it out of you, and that's exactly what's happening right now. And if you don't raise awareness and be conscious of that when you sit, and we as Americans, the best thing we can do is be aware about it and make your choices known when it's coming to election day. That's the best thing you can do to stop it. But you got to educate yourself and understand the difference between actual good versus them slowly trying to indoctrinate us into taking away some of our freedoms, just slowly, one at a time. And it's happening. And the pandemic was a perfect vessel to do that, because people are willing to sacrifice freedoms for security to a point, and they're going to push that until as far as they can, and they're going to keep pushing until we say no. So how you do that is the ballot box, and that's all I can encourage people to do is exercise that in the ballot box here in June for the primaries and November for the general election. So
that's right, and I think as these, like you mentioned, the COVID and some of the policies here, and just this crazy train that we're on right now as it relates to just government in general, I think what it also has done, though, is really exposed to really general masses of people that it doesn't have to be political. We have more commonalities than not, and I think it's really, this price at the pump, this lack of groceries on the shelves, that's just not affecting Democrats or Republicans. It's affecting everyone.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, when you start seeing this, it's death by 1,000 cuts. But when I think people from both sides can start going, wait a minute, this isn't working. And you're absolutely right. The way we change it is to keep educate ourselves, keep talking about it, and do our due diligence at the ballot box, and ensure that we have accountability and transparency in the government that absolutely is trying to take over this is cradle to grave government right now. There is absolutely a real war against our freedoms, our individual rights, our Constitution, and it's time to just not be timid about it. We got to talk about these things and help each other understand what's going on.
And please understand, when they try to tell you different, that does not make you any less patriotic or anything else. They're going to use all those tactics, but stand firm to your beliefs and things, because that's what you're allowed to do in this country. And there's a lot of people that made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure you can do that. So let's do that, please.
That is right. That's amen. You are so right.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you wanted to mention before we let you get back to it? I know you got, I'm sure, about 20 things to work on after this. So.
I'm just so grateful. Just a heads up, there's another fire that has broken out over on the Gila. We just got word of it yesterday. So it's 1,200 acres contained. So, of course, we're waiting for updates on that. And then I'm going to be heading back to the district later today or tomorrow for sure. So spend some more time in New Mexico. It's always so nice to be home.
Well, we
so
look
I'm
forward
looking
to it.
forward to that.
Well, good.
Well,
And,
good. Me too.
And anytime you're in town, want to pop in for a visit, always have an open invite, and hope you take advantage of it.
I sure will. I appreciate you so much, and you just have a blessed weekend, and thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, and you too, and thank you for working the good fight for us here in Southeast New Mexico. We do appreciate you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to do it. I'm honored to do it. So, good deal. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great weekend. When we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Sounds good. Yes,
all right.
sir.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank
all right.
you, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Congresswoman Yvette Herrell. Big thank you to her for spending some time with us and you hearing what's going on with the border and all that. I pay attention. This is the stuff. You talk about violence and all that. That's not. Go to the ballot box. We make you known, and that's how we fix this. It's the only way I know how. Without doing